Hi again, so you got 1.19 Minecraft, right? Now you want to make some new texture packs for it. It's only been a few days. Why do you want to change stuff already? Actually, I understand why you want to do it, because personally I do the same thing myself. So, let's get started. So our first texture pack today is a texture pack known as 𝓵𝓲𝓷𝓴𝓼.
So just a brief explainer for this one, it does exactly what it says on the tin. The tin says 𝓵𝓲𝓷𝓴𝓼, what you get are 𝓵𝓲𝓷𝓴𝓼. I guess maybe depending on your own opinion on that one at least. But the core idea behind this is to make the trees look more bushier when it comes down to the leaves section of it. Add a nice little 3D piece to the actual leaves themselves to make them, well, seem more bushier. Ultimately makes them more useful when it's used for any form of decoration pieces in your builds, as well as you again have got more bushy leaves.
We go over here, as you can see here, it's a lot more bushy than before. It's got like little extra textures that just sprout over the actual leaves itself, putting a little bit more detail on these leaves. Next on our list is 𝓵𝓷𝓷𝓴𝓼, also known as Pixel Perfection.
A very simple rundown of this one, it's basically just a nice fantasy themed texture pack. It's not too overkill in some of the more realistic based details that it goes for in this texture pack, but it's overall nice in the whole entire aesthetic behind it and the just how it feels. It really does feel like you've chosen to adventure into a fantasy world on this day rather than in your typical Minecraft landscape.
Then of course, as you can see here, some of the mobs would be changed. I am so not sure on that. The sheep's body itself looks really cool. The face is horrifying, to say the least. I don't know. The next texture pack is New Default Plus. This is one of the first ones that have a very heavy need for Optifine Plus for some of its special features. And one of the big things you can notice right off the bat, it's a lot more brighter in comparison to our last texture pack. And then the other thing, which I'm 90% sure this part's an Optifine special feature, is that leaves are changed depending on the biomes. So over here in the birch, in what biome are we in here? We're in a forest biome. So not all the trees are going to be yellow, but some of them are going to be. If we go over here.
Now to run through more of the details behind this one, and with the variations that you can let's say rename elytras to get different variations of elytras. Same with stuff like weapons to get different variations of textures for weapons, and so on and so forth. Again, there's also a collection of different variations worth the mobs. Most mobs have more than just that single default texture that we all know and may or may not love, and it just gives some more variety towards it, but these are all features that really take advantage of Optifine. Now for some weird reason, this is another one of those texture packs. It's already updated for 1.19, but there is no Optifine for 1.19 as of the recording of this. It might come out with a beta very, very soon to fix these issues. But again, some of these features are still locked behind Optifine, and with Optifine not being on 1.19 yet, some of the cool stuff behind this isn't exactly there. But it's still usable without it, with some pretty cool textures overall.
Next texture pack we got is Bare Bones, which kind of just simplifies all the textures to the bare necessities of the details, making it so that some things such as leaves look very weird, but then you have other things such as like this biome that just look like a lot nicer in comparison because it's just more saturated, I suppose. This is also the texture pack that you would use if you want to try and imitate the whole trailer look. Ultimately, it's just a really nice texture pack. I've always liked how this texture pack is. I've featured it in several texture pack videos for 1.18 in the past, and I still feature it now because, again, it's still a really nice texture pack for its purpose. It's just a nice saturated texture pack. The next texture pack, again, is another simple one that's just only got one little thing, and you probably already have noticed it by now as we walk by it, is that it makes the logs more rounder. Now, it keeps the original squarity of the actual block itself. It just takes advantage of like adding 3D details towards the actual block itself to make the log seem more rounded, even though it's still like a bit bricky. Next, we have Unity, another texture pack that seems to be going for more of a fantasy theme behind it, and in a lot more little details. Not trying to go for realism because,
I mean, what can I say? It's basically another fantasy pack that's kind of very dull in the actual saturation of the colors. But again, a lot of people do like that experience. It doesn't make for good any form of video footage for people like me. But ultimately, it's still a nice looking texture pack with some very well done detailing and other bits and pieces along those lines from the actual creator themselves. Another funny thing you'll probably tend to notice throughout this video is that there's a fair few different fantasy style texture packs that all have a different variation in their actual intended art style. Some going for more in one direction than another, and then some approaching more the realistic bend than the others.
Next we've got the CreatorPack. Now, this one, on the surface, okay, now I can see our first drastic changes. I do not know how to feel about these villages. I really do like the more saturated design of this texture pack. Seeing as it took me like 10 seconds to just say those very few words that you just heard, let me just run through it in the post. Practically speaking, the Creator Pack is a really useful texture pack for the creators in the world because it's a bit more saturated than normal Minecraft. Some alterations to the textures to make them ultimately a little nicer, I guess you could say. I mean, I guess the Iron Golem's not one that I would agree with, but at the end of the day, it's mainly just aimed to be a nicer creator-based texture pack that's a little bit more saturated, a little bit nicer on the colors, so that when it does get saturated to a high degree, it's not going to be as harsh on your eyes as what would be normal Minecraft oversaturated to heck and back. It seems like we got another fantasy themed texture pack known as Jicklus. Honestly, I do like a lot of these fantasy themed texture packs, and I do prefer them over the realism ones. Like, realistic texture packs are a bit in what they do. Okay, Mr. Stuttery Mess, how about we just clarify this a little bit better for you guys watching at home. So, it's another fantasy pack. This one's a little bit more saturated in comparison to the other two that I've showcased so far in this video, meaning that it's a little bit brighter with its colors if you feel like that the other two fantasy texture packs were a touch too saturated. The core idea to the texture pack, at least according to the description over on CurseForge, the pack captures the classic Minecraft feel mixed with a rustic style, which I kind of agree and don't agree with at the same time. It does capture some of the awesome classic Minecraft style, but the other time it also captures more of a nice, somewhat saturated fantasy style that isn't like overly undersaturated to make it more dark and themey than what it really needs to be. Next we have Epic Adventures, this is intriguing actually. It seems like we're roaming towards a replacement clip. Okay, so again, this is kind of more of a mixed texture pack in comparison before. What I can gather, it's still very heavy on the fantasy theming elements as what a lot of the other ones are, but at the same time it also adds in more of a realistic detailing and design approach that the other ones didn't quite put into effect as much. Again, I have my own issues with any form of realistic based texture packs. They're always a bit for me. Sometimes they can be pretty cool, but in most other occasions they're just over detailed mess that take a hunk out of your computer for ultimately no good reason in most cases. But again, it's a semi-decent texture pack if you're interested in it, and it's a little less saturated to the last one with a bit more realistic detailing behind it. The next texture pack of choice is All Variants, and yes, we're going to skip whatever the hell I chose to say in the initial recording of this, mainly because, I just rambled on about nonsense for a huge moment there, but All Variations does one very simple thing, and it does it pretty damn well. It gives you multiple different variations of what you could find with your ores, but again, this is one of those texture packs that I believe is pretty useless on 1.19 right now, because if I'm correct, I'm 90% sure that the variations things it kinda takes advantage of what Optifine does, but I digress on that one. Look, understand that the Iron Golem's very weird to create some textures for, but why? Okay, at least tell me the villagers kind of work with this. So Mythic and Pixel Art Journey, again, it's another one of those fantasy type of texture packs, just it's a little bit more pixely / grainy than the last ones. It is lacking a lot of saturation as well as a lot of the other fantasy texture packs. It's basically just another fantasy texture pack with a little bit of variations in the actual details. As I stated, it goes for more of the pixel art / grainy type approach that it does instead of what all the other ones do, with a more, we'll do a kind of realistic, kind of Minecraft, kind of fantasy type of look. But I guess that's stated in the actual name of it itself, a pixel art journey. But overall, it just kind of blends in with the many different fantasy texture packs that are out there. Next, we have Classic 3D. We got some more. The design juts out a little bit in comparison to normal. This is a texture pack that, if your computer is pretty weak, you would never want to use. This texture pack takes some of the beautiful details and aesthetics in some of the Minecraft blocks and gives them a bit more of a 3D effect to emphasize said details if necessary. Overall, just an interesting texture pack, but as I mentioned just a moment ago, it is one of those ones that do hanker the performance of your computer very heavily. Like, throughout that recording, whenever I looked towards any form of 3D based blocks, my fans on my computer noticeably got faster. So a very big thing to keep in mind there. So the next two that we have is called Enchanted Tools and Enchanted Weapons. These are just really cool little texture packs that are just really useful if you want to be able to tell the difference between your core weapons and what enchantments they have on them. For example, let's grab ourselves a diamond sword. Let's get what we want to do. What do we want to do on this? We want to get fire aspect, we want to get looting, we want to get sweeping edge, we want to get unbreaking. You can see here this fire aspect sword's now got flames around it. If we remove that, we get our looting in here. It's now a little bit more greener. We get sweeping edge in here. There's a bit of orangish stuff around it to reference that it's now sweeping sword. Then you've got unbreaking on here, which adds a little bit of blueness to it. You've got knockback, which adds a little bit of an orange texture to the sword hilt. Then you've got Bane of Arthropods, which makes the entire blade of the sword red pretty much, aside from a small section on it. And sharpness just adds like a huge chunk of quartz on the side of the blade and a little bit on the hilt as well, which has got a bit of a nice green vine-esque sweeping around it. And then you've got a silk touch pick, which has a bit of, I think, obsidian-esque colored bricking on top of the actual pickaxe head itself. Mending adds in a little bit more greenness to the pickaxe head. Unbreaking adds a nice little dot at the pickaxe binding between the head and the I don't know what to call it. Then efficiency just adds a nice copper coloring towards the actual the handle of the pickaxe, and also underneath the core head as well.
So the Tooniverse texture pack is pretty much the complete and utter opposite end of what a hyper-realistic texture pack in Minecraft would be. As I stated with a lot of the fancy texture packs featured in this video today, and most of them are pretty desaturated and are more darker in tones in their colors. We've also featured a few texture packs that are a bit more oversaturated. Well, Tooniverse kind of takes that and just throws it at the wall. Everything is so beyond oversaturated, it's not even funny. It's definitely one of those texture packs that will quickly turn off a lot of people, which wouldn't be surprising. But overall, it's a fairly high quality texture pack with a lot of time and effort being put into it to not only just make some of the textures a little bit nicer and don't be too harsh when they're in this oversaturated state, but also to cartoonize a lot of the mobs and a lot of other things along those lines. Either way, if you're interested in more 1.19 mods and texture packs and things along those lines, click this playlist on screen now, as that's going to have a collection of them building up over time. Either way, bye bye!